Hello, Internet friend. Today on Value Side, what's behind President Trump's tariff policy? I'm David Ravel. Well, for over half a century, China has produced items that American consumers want to buy, from early inexpensive toys and gadgets to today's high-tech personal computers, smartphones, and advanced equipment and machinery. What makes these transactions so distinctive was that China almost always sold these products at a lower price than any American competitor could match. To Wall Street and the U.S. economic elite, this was the best of all worlds. Bringing generally high-quality, low-priced goods to American shores meant that we enjoyed a more affluent lifestyle, and our incomes stretched further. The purchasing power of the average American increased, as did the value of the U.S. dollar. Interestingly, a multi-decade period of near-zero U.S. inflation was driven, to no small extent, by the importation of cheap Chinese goods. China's gift to us, inexpensive consumer goods, drove prices lower and lower, enriching their American consumers. Now, when you listen carefully to today's traditional economists, financiers, and politicians, you will hear this argument. Unlimited international trade benefits both parties and has enriched Americans for nearly a lifetime. So what's Trump up to? The question then arises, what is U.S. President Trump's objective in imposing tariffs on Chinese imported goods? Will he raise import prices and thereby negate all of those benefits that we've enjoyed for so long? Well, the answer is a resounding yes. Trump's Chinese tariffs in particular will make many of the goods we purchase more expensive. We can ignore the facetious argument about whether the Chinese producer, the importer, or the retailer actually pays the tariffs. The honest answer is that consumers, like you and I, purchase goods that will now cost more, regardless of who pays the tariff officer at the shipping dock. So where did this crazy idea of tariffs come from? And why did Trump aim the most draconian tariffs directly at China? Well, it's never easy to determine what this peripatetic president has in mind. The concept of predatory pricing has been well established in U.S. law for nearly 90 years. The year was 1936, when two members of Congress, Senator Joseph Robinson of Arkansas and U.S. Representative Wright Patman of Texas, saw the large store chains, supplier, and shipping companies were using unfair pricing to put small shops and stores out of business. The larger enterprises could eliminate competition by pricing goods so low, often even below manufacturing costs, that small mom-and-pop stores simply could not compete against these larger, more diversified neighbors. In the hands of unscrupulous retailers, the price of goods sold became a powerful weapon. In 1936, President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Robinson-Patman Act, specifically designed to outlaw predatory practices. But the Robinson-Patman Act stopped at the nation's borders. It was aimed, and to a considerable extent curtailed, the predatory pricing of American mega-retailers. It would be 37 years later, in 1973, when we were introduced to a foreign country that would take predatory pricing to the next level. Through a series of diplomatic moves, President Richard Nixon helped open relations with China. Thinking he was opening the Chinese market to U.S. suppliers, the reality turned out to be the direct opposite. Rather than the Chinese purchasing American goods, Americans have bought made-in-China products. In 2024, the U.S. trade deficit with China was nearly $300 billion, a 5.8% increase from the year before. This deficit was by far our most significant trading deficit with any country and represents nearly a third of our total trade shortfall. Within the Trump administration, Peter Navarro, the special counsel to President on Trade and Manufacturing, has been the most steadfast critic of China's aggressive pricing and manufacturing practices. Navarro began his riveting book, Death by China, by noting that China's failure to adhere to any U.S. standards or requirements. The world's most popular nation and soon-to-be largest economy is rapidly becoming the planet's most efficient assassin, said Navarro. Unscrupulous Chinese entrepreneurs are flooding world markets with lethal products. China's perverse form of capitalism combines illegal mercantilists and protectionist weapons to pick off American industries job by job. Unquote, Peter Navarro. Navarro delineates just how several unique strategies enhance China's predatory pricing. These strategies include artificially lowering the foreign exchange rate of the Chinese yuan, reducing production costs by ignoring environmental standards, utilizing the lowest cost labor, avoiding safety standards, and providing little or no retirement benefits for its employees, and so on. The result of these unfair practice standards is that Chinese costs are significantly lower than those of American. Even so, the standards may be irrelevant because Chinese companies are not required to make a profit when competing against America. They aim to capture the American market, and the Chinese Central Committee will meet any losses incurred. Low-impact production such as clothing, household wares, and consumer electronics will undoubtedly continue to be at the heart of the Chinese industrial colossus. However, recently China took an opportunity to show another side of its development, what Wall Street has labeled its Sputnik moment. This was about the 1957 circumnavigation of a Soviet Union satellite. At the time, America was gobsmacked by this feat of outer space technology. In the same way, we were again gobsmacked by the introduction of DeepSeek, China's foray into the AI-driven app that is remarkably close to the ChatGPT app developed by OpenAI. What made this new competitor so impactful was its very low development cost, reportedly just a few $1,000,000, versus the several $billion spent by the Americans. Combine that with a lower level of components, such as computer chips, used by the Chinese developers. China is developing into a high-tech superpower along with its conventional industrial prowess. Chinese cities like Shenzhen, Hangzhou, and Guangzhou are rapidly transforming into smart cities that aim to compete with Silicon Valley's American infrastructure. The combined impact of China's industry, from low-level manual production to high-tech automation, presents the United States with its most comprehensive challenge since the 18th century industrialized England. Much of China's capability is fully operational, just like England under King George was. On the other hand, America must retool and rebuild its own industrial base, which has been allowed to atrophy. Like Andrew Hamilton and James Madison, now President Trump and his chief trade counselor Peter Navarro have chosen tariffs to level the playing field. Only time will tell whether this new American tariff strategy will be as successful in the 21st century as it was in the 18th. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/David Ravel. That's REAVILL. Buymeacoffee.com/David Ravel. Thanks for listening.